All right. So now we're going to move into really talking more about fostering a devotion to the Eucharist and how we can do this. So we thought it was important to sort of go back, step back, and accompany the viewers with what are we even talking about? And now, what are some practical ways that we can do that? And as Deacon Matt mentioned, we do have a slide that has those three steps on there for you. We're talking about fostering Eucharistic devotion. So let's go to the three simple steps that you can do. I say simple: know more, learn more, and pray more. So we're going to talk through those with you to help you digest what we're talking about. So one thing that you want to do is you want to know more. You have to receive to believe. What do we mean by that, Deacon Matt?
So this kind of plays on a biblical understanding of the word know or knowledge, this idea of really coming into communion with something. And it involves different kind of senses, but just to be one with something, communion, relationship, to just be intimately aware and an intimate understanding of another, and in this case of our Lord in the Eucharist. So to know more, we have to receive more, because to know Jesus, the only way to know him and to come into communion with him is through that reception of Eucharist. Not that that's the only way, but that's the most privileged and complete way, if you will. I mean, we can know Jesus in our prayer as well, and prayer is certainly an important part, because that's also listed on our it's also one of our three things, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But that's what's meant by knowing more. You know by experiencing, and you know by doing, you know in this case by receiving. Same thing with adoration. You know by adoring. It's funny, if you were to like, it's almost like, I can't think of a really good analogy. If you ever think of like an event that you've never done before and someone tries to explain it to you, and have you ever heard someone's explanation, like they'll say, well, I can't tell you. You have to just do it. You have to just do it. And I think that's what we're getting at here, because you can tell somebody about adoration, what it's about, some of the theologies, some examples, and so forth. But until you've done it, and really, let's be honest, until you've wrestled with it, unless God gives you this wonderful grace of, it's just the very first time you do it, it's wonderful, and it's this very meditative, thing, which would be great. But for most people, it's a challenge because it's silent. It involves stillness. It involves having a fixated gaze. All these things, in my mind and in my opinion, run contrary to contemporary life.
Yeah.
Stillness, meditation, being focused on something, like really trying to clear your mind and just look at what's in front of you and contemplate it. So contemplation, I don't think that's something that's in our vocabulary today. I think
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is it's one thing to know about,
Yeah.
right? But it's another thing to know. And we
Yeah.
know because this is a relationship. This isn't, something that we're trying to take a test on and get the right answers. This is a relationship, and it takes time to grow in relationship. When we first meet someone, it may be uncomfortable because we don't know them.
Right.
But then when we intentionally engage with someone, we get to know them.
Right.
And I can completely relate with that example of the first time in adoration. I remember struggling for a while. And
Mhm.
how do I get comfortable in this environment? And I always start thinking of all the to do, the to do list.
Yeah.
I need to do that. So I learned, bring a pad of paper and a pencil and just start writing those things down and get them out of my mind.
Hmm.
And over time, as I felt like I was growing in my relationship with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, I was able to, adapt and then grow. So it takes time. I think it's a relationship.
Absolutely. And again, this first step, knowing more, really centers on you and your experience, and sort of just growing in the experience of adoration or the experience of receiving communion. Now, the
Right.
next one, learning more, is different, in my mind at least, than knowing more. We already talked about knowing being that intimate knowledge and that personal experience of, but then learning more about the
Right.
Eucharist. That takes us out of the realm of our personal experience and into the arena of theology and other people's, saints included, experience of the Eucharist. And we talked about a few wonderful saints here already on the show. And in terms of learning more, I mean, there's plenty of places we can go for information about the Eucharist, the Catechism, and there's wonderful documents from popes on the Eucharist, etc. But I want to make mention, at least, and I know we've highlighted it in other shows, the new USCCB document on the Eucharist and the mystery of the Eucharist and the life of the Church is what it's called. And it's a beautiful document. It's really a wonderful distillation of the Catechism's teaching on the Eucharist. Now, is that, I'm thinking of Sheila now, would I hand that to a family? No, I wouldn't. Just like I wouldn't hand a family a catechism without some kind of relationship with them and ability to answer questions and sort of offer guidance and things like that. But just talking to our audience here, if you haven't checked out that document, do check it out. But learning more is important because it helps us, it gives us new ways of thinking besides just the ones that kind of come up in our mind. I also think it moves us out of the realm of feelings, like how does it feel when we're in adoration? Sometimes that's kind of where we stop with feelings when we talk about our experiences. But there's a lot more language and meaning underneath all that. And sometimes we can't figure that all out on our own. We need to go outside of our experience and learn from others.
Yeah, great point. And there's nothing stopping you from accessing this document or any other learning because we have access to the World Wide Web. So, maybe you decide, okay, the question of the week was, would I like to grow in my devotion to the Eucharist?
Mm-hmm.
So if the answer is yes, then we have to intentionally take a step and maybe set a goal that each week I'd like to learn one new thing or read one new article or church document, whatever it is, or learn about one of these saints so that we can grow in this understanding and feed the base for devotion. So that would be a very practical goal that you could set for yourself.
Absolutely. And for our last point, pray more. It almost goes without saying, but I think we always need to say it. It's not just praying more while you're in the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist or praying more before, during, or after communion. It's really, and I've said this so many times, but it bears repeating and I'll never get tired of it. It's also praying more about what you really want. Do you really want to grow in a deeper communion with Jesus in the Eucharist? Do you really? And be honest about the answer. Steve asked the question earlier about that. Do you want a deeper Eucharistic devotion? You'd think, well, everyone's going to say yes, but do they really mean that? Because to grow into that, we're already talking about, that involves us putting time into that, putting ourselves into that, putting energy into that, and so forth. So the praying about it is praying about, Lord, I don't know if I really want this. I think I want this. I probably should want more of a devotion to you in the Eucharist. Help me to do that. Help me to know and to learn and to pray more.
Pray for the desire
to
want to know more.
Right. Pray for the desire to desire it. Absolutely.
Yeah.